Hello, everyone, and welcome to another artist talk by the School of Creative Arts Global Outreach Office. I am Gillian Rhodes, the Global Outreach Coordinator. And today we're having a talk about experiences, the art of experience, food and sustainability with Charles Michel. So my guest today is a fascinating, amazing artist that I've known for quite a long time. And so I'll just give him a little bit introduction before we get started. Working at the intersection of science, art, philosophy, community, and entrepreneurship, Charles Michel aims to inspire solutions for urgent global challenges. He is an experienced designer in a variety of fields and has worked on cutting-edge projects in community building, food innovation, regenerative hospitality, and experiential art. He has published over a dozen articles in scientific journals and starred in The Final Table on Netflix, reaching the final. So, Charles, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Julian, for the invitation. Always very stimulating to exchange with you, to discuss about art and life and purpose. So yeah, excited for this session.
Definitely. And I think what the sort of the art that you're working in is something a little different from what we're normally thinking about in an art school. Drawing and design and sculpture. So where you're working in is more on the side of food and nutrition and sustainability in that regard. So the first thing that I want to ask is when we're talking about the intersection of food and art, what what does that mean for you, and what's your experience with that?
Well, I guess the first question is always comes down to philosophy and what is art. And even I would say, so I'll try to give my heart feeling about that to begin with, set the tone, and also the question very simple, right, almost trivial. What is food? And so then I can maybe elaborate on how these two meet. Um, to me, art is a human necessity, and it is a key kind of trait of humans and human society and human identity, and it plays a role in evolution. It is about what we consider to be of the highest value, aesthetic or ethical, and we communicate it through a variety of techniques, right? And so that's kind of the broad perspective that I take. More deeply, I feel that art is an expression of the human soul. It is a way for people to find a certain purpose, whether it is the viewer or the observer or the person giving it. It's a language. It's a language that is almost like a digestive system, right? There's an input and it's being digested, and then there's an output, and that has a very important role. Um, um, a little parenthesis that I might elaborate on later is that how we understand art in modern times sometimes somehow being constrained or kind of you know um, shaped in a particular way that serves an economy. And I've seen how a lot of art is basically being commoditized, like many things in the world, um, and that creates a different set of forces at play that, in my opinion, sometimes disconnect us from the true purpose of art. And there's no judgment in what I'm saying; it's just an observation. And to then create pieces that are commercially viable, and even speculation around the cost of a particular art or just business comes has a very important force into what we understand as art. And so to that kind of broad perspective, the what is food question. Food is to me the most fundamental energy that we capture from the world around us, from the elements, the alchemical dance of photosynthesis, sunlight, air, water, soil, and all that becomes a substance, right? A fruit, whether it is the fruit of an animal, like it's a, you know, a young animal that comes and that we end up rearing to eat. That's a fruit. The fruit of the roots, the leaves, the seeds, all these substances that allow for life to be possible. And this works in all life forms. We are no exception. Food is central to our life, and it's what fuels our bodies and our minds. Now, at the intersection of those two, I find something very interesting. And food is not considered a classical art form. So it has always been for me a space of curiosity, a space of exploration, a space of questioning things, questioning why is art the way it is? Why are there no food museums? It's one of the first questions I ask myself. Why is there no institutions of food apart from the business of it or the training of cooks, which are also a tool of a bigger economic paradigm, which is, you know, the food industry, the restaurant industry. Why is there no more talk about the soft, spiritual, cultural, wellness aspects of food? And because of that frustration, I connected both the power of art and the power of food, and like, okay, I'm going to do food art, just make us think about our relationship to both the energy that feeds us and the purpose of what it means to be alive, expressed through art.
Right. And in exploring this, it's led you to, so many different paths and so many different experiences. So, you have the high cuisine of Michelin star restaurants, and then you had the art of reality TV and media making with the Netflix show. And now you're kind of doing something very different, which is more in master classes and the experience of food. And you've also done food paintings and all of this. So, like, as an artist, as a person, what's your opinion on all these different areas and aspects?
So those different areas or aspects of the work that I've been doing, or the exploration, I feel that I see myself as a translator, or as someone who creates bridges amongst worlds that are often separate. What I see, that the opportunity and what I've been jumping in is to, for example, right, a very clear example of a bridge is there is the fine dining world. There is, creating beautiful dishes that have a particular aesthetic, a particular protocol, a particular tradition and history to respect. It's abstracting all the social constructs around the food itself, and taking that food and putting it on a canvas where everything changes around food put on a canvas versus food put on a plate. It is the same in essence, the same molecules, it's the same technique. But when I put it on a canvas, first I have more space to express myself visually, even if it's the same amount of the same ingredients, the same recipe. But then what it does to people when they sit in front of a plate, they might be taking their cutlery, and the whole behavior, the whole bodily expression changes when they are put in front of a canvas where it's more of a discovery. The very embodiment of the act of eating changes. So art, or these artistic infusions, changes the experience people have and the relation that people have, and it changes them somehow. That is my hope, right? So the way I see my work at the intersection of all these ways of expressing food is one that is to make people ask better questions. And that is, if I had to choose one thing, of course, there's the pleasure, there's the beauty, there's the skill, there's the education that comes with it. But if there's one thing that I would say that I had to choose why I'm doing what I'm doing is to make people shift their minds about what food means, right? So it's a very profound, um, let's say, push that I try to do with at the intersection of all this to make people think about their relationship to the living, because food is the living matter with which we interact on a daily basis. There are massive struggles when it comes to food systems, when it comes to inequality, injustices, suffering, whether it is of humans or animals, part of the food system. And and so it's basically creating the framework for people to experience something mundane, turn it into a more magical experience, an enchanting experience that will then teach and change deeply the connections that people make in their minds and in their bodies about what food means.
Yeah. It's interesting though, food, when you think about it in that way, it's a little bit like a performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's ephemeral. It's so it doesn't last, you eat the food and then it's gone, and so you've also worked in designing experiences which are essentially performances.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see the similarity between the food work, the food art, the performing arts, and these experiences that you design? It's all this ephemerality.
Mm.
How does that sort of function in your work and your outlook?
Yeah, there's a very there's a beauty in the ephemeral, right? It's um that's quite philosophical in essence, which is what is not ephemeral in the grand scheme of things, right? Like this infrastructure that I'm surrounded with, this house, will it be here in 500 years? Maybe
Right.
not. It was probably not here 40 years ago. In the
Right.
grand history of time, this is ephemeral. Everything is ephemeral.
Mm.
Of course, we push the boundaries of what's ephemeral when it's just a fleeting moment. But maybe that is its power. I almost feel like there's a nostalgia associated with the ephemeral. I find that the ephemeral is, in essence, a power because it just will never repeat itself again, ever again in the history of the universe, maybe in that particular way. And so the game there for me as an artist is to make people pay attention as best as I can so they realize just how unique the moment is, and that leads to gratitude, and that leads to presence, and ultimately I feel that what I would, you know, what I love about this ephemerality is what stays in people's hearts and minds, right? Like as I said, when there's a shift, when you realize that, of course, this is very culturally dependent, but I've made a lot of people realize that eating with their hands is better than eating with a fork, and they're like, I never thought about it. Like I'm just on automatic, just eating with a spoon or a fork. When I lick, when I smell, when I have a different connection, there's enzymes in the sweat of my fingers that are going to be beneficial for my digestive system. Once you see that, you cannot unsee it. And there's a beauty in that these ephemeral spaces, if well crafted, they can actually um, help change mindsets that change habits. And there it's okay. I shift something in my way of behaving, in my way of being. That for example, something very simple. We might touch on it later as well. When there's one way of cutting a mango, and one like, just chops little first peels and then chops little things and just have like some cubes in front of you, and it's literally just fuel. You just put it in your body. But then there is a way to cut that doesn't take more time. It only takes a skill, which is something that you learn, maybe through one of these ephemeral experiences. And then you have a mango experience that ultimately reduces the amount of food that is wasted, because when you peel with a knife or with a peeler your mango, there's a 5% or even 10% of the weight of the mango will go out to the bin with the skin. Same thing with the seed, right? So if you have a different ritual, which is something that you can establish through art, through an artistic experience, through a beautiful aesthetic experience, you have a different way of approaching that mango, you will enjoy more. You will be more in connection with the living system that brought the mango to you. You will be more connected to your own sensations. You will not be just kind of pinching, looking at something or speaking. You'll be paying it, you don't pay attention really when you're with a fork, right? It's automatic. You pay attention to this mango, and then you realize that the whole universe is contained in that mango and in that moment. And that is nourishment beyond nutrition, right? Nourishment beyond the physical, chemical nutrition. And if you like that, then you do it again. And then you maybe teach it to your kids. And there's something that shifts. And this is where I see the power of art. And this is where I see the importance of food through the lens of art, that can change a lot of things about our relationship to the living. Again, I land on the same point as this last question. It's how are we using this ephemeral, using these glimpses of experiences in time and space to help shift towards more consciousness, in a way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Pakistan is famous for its mangoes. So it's interesting you chose this example. The mango season comes around. Actually, it's coming fairly soon, and it's it's such everybody looks forward to it so much that mango season.
Well, there's a connection, right? I am Colombian, and there's also like a country where we have like dozens of varieties of mangoes. And so you will relate, right? There's one thing to have like the mango cut and then putting the seed out and taking the seed and eating the seed.
Yeah.
The thing is that for some reason, society has, Western society in particular, has taught that it's not elegant to eat with your fingers and to lick and to suck on something when those are very natural states of interaction with food.
Right.
And so the question there with this mango, there could be a whole performance done with mango, right? Like you and I know that, if that's there could be a whole performance.
Certainly.
Well, to make it beautiful and meaningful, to do this interaction with the mango in a way that is ultimately better for us and more honoring of the true beauty of the mango, which is quite amazing. Maybe this is the only planet in the universe with mangoes.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, it's just a mango. And in season, they fall on the floor and they rot. And that's fine.
Right.
And so there's something special there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's only one planet like this. So, a lot of what you've been talking about so far is it's about the art as an experience. It's right, the experience that we go through in witnessing art and the experience that we go through after witnessing art. And so experiences, not just in food, but just generally the experience of a retreat or something like that. That's also something that you've worked in. So, how do you approach these kind of experiences? As an artist, you're creating this thing that people are going through, just like it would be a performance, except that it's more immersive, it's more long term. It's almost like you're designing a certain a week-long performance for people to go through. How do you approach that, and what's your kind of what's your artistic process in designing experiences?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. What's the artistic process in designing experiences? I feel that ultimately every artist is an experience designer. You're designing an experience to communicate something, to show a skill, to show beauty, or to show ugliness, which is another form of beauty, to communicate something, right? I feel that experiences have a beautiful power because it's basically you can allow yourself as a creator and as an observer or as someone who experiences to be in the art, not just to be detached from it, to see it on a paint on a wall behind a window, not being able to touch it. You can actually be inside of the art and you can become a participant in the art, which makes you part of the artwork and makes you and your life and that moment art. Um, so I definitely see the experiences as an art form, and I definitely take an angle of like any experience I design intentionally, right? Because sometimes there's a transaction in creating an experience. Like if someone asks me to, I don't do this anymore, but if someone asks me to do like a catering, like, yeah, it's a transaction. I can also put some artistic flair to it. But if it's truly artistic, the experience is about an immersion into a worldview that is there to teach you something. For me, this is personal. I'm not sure if it relates to all arts or all artistic intentions, but to me, being an artist and being an educator are two sides of the same coin. Because I use my craft in order to teach something, in order to make people think. So the aesthetic is almost like the Trojan horse. It's the cover, it's the sugar coating, the beauty that gets people in. And then when you're in that immersive, like you experience something profound. To give you a very small example, yet very powerful one, I feel, is that in my ecology of food masterclass last year, um, talking about ecology of food is like a broad topic. It touches on sustainability, it touches on the art of living, it touches on ethics, it touches on traditions, on many things. But we only ate meat. We only ate one meat during the whole week. And it was a recipe from my great grandmother that we prepared, which is a rooster cooked in wine. And when people arrived, I told them that this was going to be the plan for food, like there's only one meat, and that meat that we were going to eat on Friday was alive in the chicken coop. And so that was the moment where people said like, oh, oh, we're going to the rooster is alive, which means that we're going to kill it. Yeah. And that was just like a moment where it's like a drop in, like, oh, the following morning, very respectfully, I took the life of the animal, showing people how to do it in the most humane way. And everybody felt very profound emotion, tears. There were, you know, questionings about like, what world do we live in where this happens and it's strong? Sacrificing an animal is powerful. Um, but it's also beautiful because it gives us life, it gives us sustenance. Once you see that, you cannot unsee it, and you question your stance about eating meat um, unequivocally. And then the whole process was so beautiful and culminated in this ecstasy of eating this animal and being like, I know, like people were even wearing feathers of the animal on their necklaces. Some of them made like little on their hair, and because I took some feathers of the animal, that was beautiful. It was a beautiful rooster, and there was a connection, an intimate connection between the food and right the art and the observer. But then because you're eating it, you become the art as well, because it's not just the recipe; it's the ritual that happened. It's the experience that created a very profound kind of experience. And this is where I think that art turns into medicine, art turns into education, art turns into a very profound digestive system to really think about things a bit further. Um, and just as a ending, kind of that part, I think that art today, and this is my personal stance, of course, and if the art is not, I think that also has a purpose to be. But I feel that there's so much isolation in the world right now. There's so much disconnection that is creating a lot of suffering, and I'm not. I really think also that we're in the best times in history on many levels. I'm not a pessimist, but I do think that there is a lot of unnecessary suffering and unnecessary isolation. And if art can bring just a tiny fraction more connection to each other, to our internal states in our bodies, and to the world, to the natural world, then art plays an even more important role in what is, the cosmic dance of evolution. And thanks to the media that we have nowadays, we're able to communicate very powerful ideas. And I see a lot of people that use these technologies of communication, like social media and all that, to communicate things that are not necessarily moving humanity in a place of more consciousness, more awareness, and more connection, and more respect, and more gratitude, and more reverence to the magic of being alive. And so that's where I see like a very potent role in the artist, in the artivist, somehow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard that term before. I think I quite like it. It's quite interesting. And so kind of going in that direction, actually, because that brings us to the last question that I wanted to talk about, which is kind of, in some ways it seems like it's moving away from art, but I think it's maybe leaning into it, more into this idea and this approach that you have, which is about sustainability and food waste. And these are two things that you are particularly passionate about, and something that you do speak a lot about, and spend a lot of energy in educating people about. So, not just the experience that people go through in order to learn these things, but just the entire sort of idea of sustainability. Do you think that can be seen as an art, in it, like a medium of art in and of itself? And what do you think would change in the world if we considered it as such?
Mm. Yeah, sustainability is a very charged word, because we use it for a lot of things. Sustainability actually means, somehow to sustain something, to sustain a living system. But right now, I feel that if we sustain the status quo, we're running through the cliff. So I guess the power of art in that, I feel, is that we need to reframe and we need to regenerate, right? So in a sense, taking a concept that is so broadly spoken about nowadays and pushing it to the limit where you're like, this is actually not working. Even the talks about sustainability nowadays are not enough. If you look at the facts, if you look at the data, if you look at greenwashing and a lot of communication that is being done to basically sustain a certain way of doing things that's creating harm, but we still want to sustain it. And so I feel like, again, there comes kind of the activist in it, which is what becomes art truly, is I am here questioning things. Many times in human history, there's been art that shocks, art that creates surprise, and then there's also art that pleases, and that just soothes, right? And more like medicinal, like chamber music in the 16th century or 17th, with violin and all that. There was a beauty to it that was about kind of relaxing into the beauty. But in order for that art to emerge, like, let's talk about monarchy, let's talk about all the systems that sustained and created these art forms. And so it's like, oh, okay, as an artist, then I have agency, I have a choice to see in which system I'm going to play and what role I'm going to play. I was speaking recently with a friend who's passionate about sustainability, and an artist, and he was like, I just couldn't work with oil, and oil paint and all these toxic chemicals that you find in every art store. And so he took a complete shift in his visual art and just started, creating pigments and he only paints with the pigments that he can produce. He doesn't have the whole color palette in his art. He cannot, because it's unreal. It's chemical. It's not real. It's not sustainable. So thinking and having integrity with sustainability then changed completely the way he understood his art. And now he's selling super well his art because he took that position that is like, zero, I'm only going to use natural pigments. So he makes his own charcoal. He uses indigo colors. He uses all these things that are beautiful and that convey so much power. His paintings are like these landscapes, and it just gets you in there because he made that decision. So I feel that there's a political stance in how we do art, and that is art in itself, or one of the ways in which art can play a role. At the same time, I do not want to discount the power of the soothing arts and the more medicinal aspects of art, which is to relax people's nervous system, to bring beauty, to make sense of things that are sometimes hard to make sense of. And so I guess there's this very fire energy to art, and there's also this very water energy to art, and there's also this very soil and this very air, right? Like the elements itself, like could almost. I'm pretty sure that this is also something as a dancer and performer that you are, right? Each of the elements can bring a completely different expression and completely different meaning and a completely different action or power over the observer. And it's our choice, right, to be which one. But there needs to be a very profound, I feel, either intuitive approach or intellectual approach or both that gets us to really question, why is it that we're doing this again? Like, why are we doing art in the first place? I think that question we sometimes forget, but that's a very important one. It's a good starting point.
I think it's also a brilliant ending point. And that's kind of a great way to wrap this up. And I think you've given a lot to think about, a lot to digest, as it were. And it's always it's always interesting to hear your perspective on things and how you think about things as you're really embedded in this world that I think most of us don't think about a lot. You're right. We just take a fork and that's that,
Yeah.
and so it's just really fascinating. So I really appreciate you taking this time
Yeah.
to share your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Thank you, Gillian, for the questions. There's just one little thought I wanted to leave you with, and anyone watching this, which is that I feel it's important to note that we're not living in ordinary times. This is one of the most crucial times in human history, and my question is like, what are we going to leave to future generations? Because the way we live is critical in what it will become our legacy. How will future generations think of us? And that brings a very beautiful responsibility, and not in the sense of like carrying a weight, but rather in an ability to respond, or responsibility, which comes, whatever our craft is, whatever our job is, with this little extra something, little extra power to do things that are aligned with our essence and with the heart, more than with the mind, and to put connection forth. So yeah, I just wanted to leave with that.
I think it's very true. We live in crucial times, so it's a great thing to keep in mind, not as a heavy burden to carry, but as as you say, an opportunity. So yeah, I think it's a great place to end. So we'll end this here, and thank you for listening and watching. This has been a SOCA Artist Talk by the Global Outreach Office.